and welcome to the show. I'm Vila Bianca.
I'm Eric Murphy.
This is Skeptic Generation.
And we need to talk.
And we hurt everywhere.
So badly.
So badly.
Oh my goodness.
It's been a week, you guys.
It really has.
Oh my God. Okay.
Well, I mean, we should tell them about it.
Yeah, let's dive in a little.
Okay, so...
We're still in the studio for one more episode. We know we said the other week that last week was going to be our last episode in the old place. But we had a lot to do this week, getting ready to move.
Yeah, so it turns out we needed to paint the place before we got there. It was not great.
No.
So after our full-time jobs, we've been going every day after work and trying our best to paint until midnight.
Yep.
And then after that, rinsing and repeating every day this last week. So very little sleep. And then come Friday was move day.
Yeah.
And you lived on a third-story apartment with no elevators.
And it was just the two of us. So
yeah, for a lot of it. Once we got to my place, we got some help from Thomas. But
like,
yeah,
it was rough. At one point, though, there was a bagpipe player that started. Like, I was about to have a breakdown. I was just like, this is impossible. I am not physically capable of doing this. And I was like this close, and then bagpipes out the window. I was like, all right, my Irish ass got off the floor. Yeah. I was like, well, let's do this.
I'm just happy that it worked out. I'm really, really happy that it worked out. So we're almost entirely moved in. The only thing that's left is this studio. So after this, we are packing all of this up, taking it to the new place. Say goodbye to these microphones, goodbye to this background.
Yep.
We're going to be doing our best over the next week to make sure that we have a show ready for you next Sunday.
Yeah. I like how you said there's nothing left outside of this studio. It's like we're broadcasting from a void.
Yeah, okay, fair.
Like
everything else is packed and taken. Yeah.
I like it. All right, so we have a couple things to go through before we can get to callers.
Absolutely.
Before we do anything else, though, I know that we've been... I have been remiss, at least in the times that I've hosted, to talk about actually calling the show until like the end of the intro. I'm going to try flipping that around, doing that first. If you would like to call the show for any reason, really, I mean, we want to talk about the God question, right, and theism and religion, but we're also here to be skeptical about other things together. So if you want to call in about religion or politics or philosophy, we are not a 503...
501c3 nonprofit.
We're not, so we can talk about anything we fucking like. We can also swear, which is awesome.
We don't do it very often, though, but we can.
We can.
Yeah.
It's nice to know it's an option. So if you want to talk about anything under the sun, please call and talk with our call screeners. You can call us at 585-LaMurph. That's 585-526-8774. Mm-hmm. Or you can use your computer if you don't want to get your phone out and dial in at tiny.cc/callsg.
CALLSG.
Thank you for spelling call.
Hey, I know.
Radio announcer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got that thing with my voice this morning, and so I'm
lack of sleep has made Eric's voice an entire octave deeper just in time for Father's Day. He's really rocking the whole, dad vibe. I'm liking it.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. This isn't going to get weird, I promise.
All right. You ready?
All right, yes. Let's talk about merch.
Okay.
We have merch. And in case you are wondering, this merch is not going to be around forever.
No. So we've got a lot of really, really cool stuff coming down the pipe. And we specifically wanted to make sure that it said 2021 for a reason on our merch, because we're going to be changing everything. But we're moving, so be patient with us. We've got a whole lot of cool stuff planned. It's got to roll out.
Yeah. So grab this merch now. You can also get the Book of Eric. These have been selling like hotcakes. We are very excited about that. If you want to support the show and you don't want to wait a week for shipping, you can also help us out in a variety of ways. We've got
Yeah.
a Patreon, tiny.cc/donate to SG. We've got an Amazon wish list, tiny.cc/SG wish list, which is so difficult to say. And then we added a new one, which is tiny.cc/tip SG, and that goes to buymeacoffee.com. And essentially why we added this is because a lot of people were like, how can we support you one time without signing up on Patreon?
PayPal seems weird.
Yeah. So if you want to send us a one-time $5 for drinks to get us through the day,
it is sincerely appreciated.
yeah, absolutely. That's an option now. All right. One last thing. We are going to be wrapping up our flyer campaign next week. So next Sunday is the last Sunday you've got to send in a flyer. Didn't get any intros this week. We did get one like 10 minutes before the show. So that will be entered into our slot for next week as everybody piles in their last submissions. But yeah, if you would like a free shirt signed by me and Eric, the other ones are going out as soon as we get settled in the new place. And you've got one more week to do that. So
cheers to that.
Yeah. Anything else? Am I missing anything?
I don't think so. If so, I will remind you during the show.
Cool.
In the meantime, who are we talking to?
Let's talk to Briar in Colorado. Briar, welcome to the show. Welcome. Good morning.
Hi, me and Eric. How are you guys?
We are doing amazing now that we're talking to you. What can we help you with today?
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say thank you guys have been a huge instrument in my deconstruction over the last year. I really appreciate it. I am an ex-Jehovah's Witness.
Wow, okay.
So there has been quite a big difference over the last year for me.
Oh, for sure.
And,
Yeah,
it's huge. So the main thing is that in the Jehovah's Witnesses, they pretty much control every part of your everyday, including how you pray and what you think and what you do and what you say and how you dress and how you look. And I pretty much mindlessly went throughout my life. I never questioned anything very hard up until like literally a couple months before the last election, which I'm like, I just can't let this happen anymore. Like I have to start thinking for myself. And so I got completely out of the religion. I haven't actually technically done the whole disassociation thing because my sister lives with me and she's active.
Oh, good.
So that would cause some rifts in my home life. But I have, in secret, been listening to you guys constantly.
Yay! Nice.
And on top of that, I feel like everything in me wants to release that last bit of theism that has been holding me down. And the thing is I was like ready to do it, right? I was like, Jehovah's Witnesses are crazy. I'm so ready to get out of here.
Yeah.
And I wanted to change my entire life. I wanted to be more like you guys. I wanted to understand my brain better. And then a couple really weird things happened. And I feel like this is probably just a part of my indoctrination, but I feel like I was protected in my old life. By some force, because now I just have all of this energy coming at me, and I personally feel like over the last couple months through meditation and in my search, I feel like people have or I don't know if they would be technically deities. I feel like I have met people outside of my body in like a spirit world. Which sounds really strange to say out loud, including to me, because my entire life I didn't think that was possible. So the last year has been really, really intense. And I'm calling you guys because you guys are the first people that I ever heard the word epistemology from. So I'm trying to use good tools and have reasons for what I believe. And I just can't figure out why this is happening to me now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Briar, actually. And the first thing that I want to say to you before we jump into maybe picking apart some of these holdovers, some of these new things that you're grappling with, is that you are going through a huge thing right now, and there is absolutely no requirement for you to get rid of all of it right away. Okay, so I know there's a lot of people who out there say, oh, I became an atheist like that at the age of 8. I realized God didn't exist and boop, it all went out the window all at once. And for some people, that might be how it worked. But especially for somebody coming out of a cult, especially for somebody coming out of a place where every element of their life was influenced by this so directly, we do not have any expectations of you to ditch it all at once. And I want you to be gentle with yourself, because this is huge what you're doing. You're essentially recontextualizing every piece of your existence. And that's going to take time, and that's going to take a lot of grace that you show towards yourself.
Self-compassion.
Yes. So I want to start off by saying that if we can get even half of the way to one piece of understanding today, that is more than enough. Okay?
Yeah, it has been a journey. I really appreciate you guys are supporting me without even knowing it. Like, it has been a huge help just to be able to listen to you guys and get, a little bit of logic into my brain that has been mush for almost 30 years.
Well, as you break it down, it's not so much mush as it is, with the tools that you had at the time, it was the best that, you can come up with, and that's true. So give yourself some credit. It's not mush. It's just as you get more information, then you get to apply that and grow from there.
Right.
Yeah, and I also have to add, I'm a third generation Jehovah's Witness.
Okay.
So I my parents don't have these tools. My grandparents don't have these tools. It's definitely like breaking generational habits and trauma to just believe what you're told because that's what you're told.
That is, you are doing so much important work right now, and I just want to acknowledge that right off the bat.
Cheers.
As far as the things that are holding on, as far as these things that you might be encountering for the first time, can you maybe go into a little bit of specifics in terms of, you say you feel like you may have met some deity or some being outside of your own body. I know it feels weird to put words to it, especially on a call with people who, don't necessarily believe that, but I would love to hear a little bit more specifics around one of those incidents, if we can kind of do bullet points of that.
Absolutely. I didn't believe it either. When it happened to me, I was pretty much silent for 3 days, where everybody was like, what is wrong with you? Are you okay? Like, I had friends and family reaching out because I just went off grid. I was like staring into the void. I could not figure out what had happened. I felt like I was pretty much trying to convince myself it was just a dream. So what happened was, one day I got home from work. It was around noon. It was a really stressful day. So I decided to do a mindfulness meditation that I've been doing. Pretty much, I've been having panic attacks since I was like 7 years old. So it's a technique I learned in therapy a long time ago. With sit, count your breaths, let feelings come and go. Yeah. And I was sitting on my poof in my bedroom, meditating. And like I do pretty much every day, if not every other day. And I feel like I fell. I feel like I fell. I was disembodied. I did not see anything in particular, which is not even how my dreams are. My dreams are very realistic. Most of my dreams are like, I wake up and I'm getting ready for work. Like, my dreams are boring. And so it was a very weird, otherworldly feeling where I could sense things around me, but I couldn't see anything. And then a personification, was in front of me, and they had ravens on their shoulders, and the ravens were like flapping as if we were going really fast somewhere, but it felt like we weren't moving. And it was a very fatherly/motherly, they, them kind of emotion came for me, where I was just like, this person is like meeting me and telling me that we're okay, and it was no words involved, where this person just, we had an exchange of emotions and feelings and thoughts, almost as if we were meeting and had a 3-hour conversation with each other, you know, like a first date.
With the Morgan. First date with the Morgan. I would be down with that.
It was very strange. I was not attracted to the thing. I'm just saying. Like, it was like that first meeting where it was like, it was very strange.
Can I jump in a little bit?
And then, it's almost over.
Oh, go for it.
I woke up pretty much, and I was still sitting in the same spot I was sitting in, and it was dark outside, and 4 hours had passed. And it felt like maybe a couple minutes in this experience. So, and I've like never taken a drug in my life, hardly drank if ever, wasn't especially tired, and I was sitting up the entire time. So it's really hard to explain, and I wish it didn't happen, because I feel like I would be on my way to like pretty much calling myself an atheist right now if that didn't happen.
But that's, I think you'd be cheating yourself a little bit by going through this experience. You are now able to, contextualize a lot more. I mean, it's the last thing, especially after coming out of being a J-dub, I wish that I didn't know this thing, this kind of idea of forbidden knowledge, shouldn't be something that you ever have to contend with again in the future. And the fact that, it complicates things, that's okay. It just gives you the chance to explore, and you're exploring it right now. So I think first is validity, right? You have a valid experience. That doesn't mean that it necessarily happened in the real world, but that does mean that you are allowed. So I have an example I haven't given in a really long time. Briar, I'm gonna give you a little story, okay? So just follow this with me. It's kind of part of building your identity. We tell these stories to ourselves, about ourselves, and it's what I believe is at the core of identity is these stories. And so imagine, Briar, that when you were in kindergarten, you were playing with the other kids, and you asked the teacher, if you can go to the restroom, and the teacher said no, wait until recess. And you said, I really got to go. They said no. And so you got angry, and you stood up, and you stared the teacher right in the eye, and you peed your pants. And that's a story you go, you know what? I'm not going to ever back down when somebody says something that's not okay. There's this view of truth to power. It's part of this story that you tell yourself. And then as an adult, you run into that teacher, and you tell them, oh, there's this thing that happened, and it stuck with me. It was so important. Well, according to your teacher and your parents and everyone else involved, it actually never happened. So now what? You have this story that you've told yourself that is incredibly important to the person that you've built up until this point. But what if it never happened, right? I've lived a life where I was gaslit for a very long time, and I was told that I was stupid, and that I was forgetful, and that all of the important things, were just not in my head, and I believed it. It was a story that was told to me that I accepted. It wasn't true, but it became a part of my identity. These are important things that are stories, but they are still important. So the validity part of your story, right? What you got out of it, those things aren't gone with the wind. We just need to determine how much of it actually happened in reality. You know what I mean? So what a lot of people go through when they meditate, things like that, kind of just drifting into this in-between space happens. I have lost hours and hours for meditation. How about you, V?
Yep, absolutely.
And so I guess the first question I want to ask you as a skeptic is, Briar, if you found out that this wasn't true, that it never happened, would it be less meaningful to you?
That's a really good question. I don't think it would.
You don't think it would? That's fair.
Well, it did happen. We just don't know what it is yet, right?
Yeah.
Like, you did experience this thing and it did impact you immensely, it sounds like. But we just don't know what it is, what the, where it exactly came from. But that doesn't mean that it didn't happen,
Yeah, it's just that element of what happened in the real world. And so we as skeptics, now our what we do is we want to go, okay, what are the other possible explanations? Let's stack them all together and find out, because the worst thing we can do is go, well, I can't think of anything better, and that therefore it has to be, my answer has to be the truth. So we start coming up with, okay, it could be this. What if it was this? What if it was that? And then we go from there. I know a lot of people who aren't used to that kind of skepticism will approach it and they'll go, oh my gosh, you're so mean. You just keep telling me that I'm wrong and that it was these other things. And it's like, no, that is how we apply skepticism. We think of what are any possible, things that could explain the phenomena, so that we can contextualize how likely the real thing was. The cookies stolen from the cookie jar. Okay, it could have been the cat, could have been the neighbor, could have been aliens, could have been Bigfoot,
Probably
or it could have been V.
Rhino's kids.
Yeah, or it could have been V, right? Okay, well, I'm pretty sure it was aliens, but once I stack it up against the fact that I live with V now, by the way.
Yay!
It's likely V. V likely stole the cookies from the cookie jar. And so in this scenario, there are lots of things that happen in the brain. And that is definitely, something that could explain, right? Maybe having a lucid dream.
Also, it sounds, Briar, from the way you've described your meditation practice, you said you've been doing it since you were 7?
Yeah.
So you're good at this by now. Like, this is not...
Exactly.
Yeah, a lot of people work their whole lives to get to a place where they can lose time and have these deep experiences during meditation. That's the goal. You may have just done the thing that you've been doing so well that you experienced something new. The goal is to have the kinds of experiences and leaving of the body in that perceptual way. For like a lot of people who have been doing this for years and years and years will talk about this kind of thing. So the fact that you're already putting yourself into this altered headspace after a very stressful day, you said, and you get home and you're in this headspace that you've gone back to for years and years of practice, and you have this experience, to me, I just want you to teach me your meditation skills. Like, that's what I want out of this conversation.
Well, and that's the main thing about it, is that I feel like it wasn't me. I feel like to this moment, you just have to listen to you guys, I'm working on it. Yeah. But I feel like it was somebody else introducing themselves to me. I feel like it was out of my control.
Understood. Can I ask you something else, Briar?
Of course.
So I guess I got to kind of explain it for it to make any sense. But often when I remember a thing, it starts off almost like an image out of focus and gains focus over time the more I kind of think about it and really focus on what happened. And actually what I'm doing is filling in the details, and it becomes more and more clear. And so as time passes, a lot of supernaturally described events get more and more detailed. Do you think it's possible that the detail that you remember now may not have been detail that you would have described immediately following the event?
Yeah, I actually started a dream journal based on this experience. Okay. Because I was just like, I need to be able to look back and see what was going on that day. Did I get any sleep the night before? Things like that. I'm trying to think of it as logically as possible. But it's been almost a year now and nothing like that has happened again.
What I would challenge you to do is write down the details, as many details of the dream as you can. And then later on, when you have other details that, oh yeah, this happened too, You can look back and go, no, not actually. I'm adding things. Because that's just something we as humans do. Every time you access a memory, you're changing it just a little bit. But
I really wish I would have written one at the time.
Well, I mean, it's totally okay. So how about this? Briar, what if you never found out? Then what?
Oh.
So
I don't know.
well, so
I don't know how to reconcile what it is just because I was so ready to like let go. You know, I have no reason to believe anything I have believed my entire life.
Then Briar,
because nothing had happened for me.
Yeah.
And then this happened, and I feel like now I kind of have a reason to believe, even though now I don't want to.
Well, so whether you want to or not, the fact that you're wanting to follow the evidence where it leads is a really, really good place to be.
And honestly, just to kind of wrap this up, because we need to jump to other callers, Briar, I don't think that it was a deity myself. I don't think that you were visited by anybody other than possibly a part of your own brain. You know, if you've been talking to you in this conversation, you mentioned how you were a third generation J-dub. You had a set routine for everything. You described your brain as mush, which Eric rightfully pushed on a little bit. But essentially what happened is you had your neural pathways short-circuited in a lot of different ways, right? If I do this thing, this is what I think. If I do this thing comes next. And that really created kind of this loop in your brain that you were not able to escape, essentially. So maybe, and this is just another way of looking at this other person, this other feeling of this other being in your meditation, in your dream, in this place that you inhabited in your own head, is other parts of your brain saying, hey, we exist. You don't need to go from this is the way things are to this is the way things are. There can be that beautiful, magical gray area that you can explore and find fascination with.
It's so uncomfortable, though.
It really, really is.
It takes so much work to get there and be comfortable in that space of maybe I will never know. But like we say on this show, like we've said before, the best thing you can say in some situations as a skeptic is, I don't know. And it's so hard.
I honestly, I think that that is one of, or is a sign of serious integrity to be able to say, I don't know. To put it on the shelf and say, I may never know. This is on the shelf of unknowns. Doing that is amazing, Briar, because there are so many people who don't like it so much that they'd rather make up a reason than put it on that shelf of I don't know. But
for sure.
Instead
of...
Well,
thank you guys so much. I appreciate all the input, and it's going to be what I'm working on for the next couple weeks for sure.
Okay.
Cheers. Well,
call back if you come up with anything new. We would love to continue to talk to you as you start dissecting all of these various pieces of your life and your identity. It's huge, and you don't have to do that by yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you for calling in.
I appreciate you guys.
We appreciate you too. Bye. Thanks, Briar.
Who are we talking to next?
Ooh, let's go with we've got some awesome repeat callers that I definitely want to get to, but Lily in California actually has a very interesting question that I feel like we would have fun playing with.
Sure, let's go ahead and take Lily. In the meantime, it looks like there was a tech issue, and we're still working it out, everybody, but we lost a couple of callers that were sitting in the queue. So if you were dropped, please call back in. And if you want to talk to us, now's the time to call in. 585-526-8774. That's 585-LaMurph. Or call in online. We have so many people from England right now that are calling. You can go to tiny.cc/s, or what is it?
You just spelled it before.
Tiny.cc/callsg. That's tiny.cc/callsg. We want to talk to you and want to know what you believe and why. But now,
let's go to Lily in California.
Hey, Lily.
Lily, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me on, guys. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited for you to be here too.
Yeah, and as for the the interaction or the flyer entry 10 minutes before the show. If it was a gigantic thread, that was probably me. That's a story for another time, but
all right.
It was a fun morning. But I'm here. We got philosophy to work on.
Okay.
All right. What's up?
Yeah.
I call myself a mathematician. I'm not formally trained. I'm actually entering a math degree next year.
Nice.
But as far as like the technical side of math and those subjects goes, that's where I focus. But I've been more and more as I mature, been getting into the philosophy of math side of things.
Ooh.
And there's this question of invention versus discovery that I've noticed my perspective has been shifting on probably the most. So I think that's a good place to focus. And that's kind of why I'm bringing it up on the show, hoping to hear your guys' perspectives as well.
Absolutely. Okay. Also, I just love the idea, like you pinpointed that so beautifully, Lily, where you were like, this is the area where I sense my perspective shifting. So let's hone in on that, right? And that is really what we're all about. That is the antithesis of that is, oh no, I sense weak ground, run away, right? Like, this is awesome. Right. I love this.
It just as a behind the scenes, when V and I do this, we will just like zoom in and peck each other to pieces on these individual things. So we're happy that you're calling.
What's up?
So my plan is to take you through like the way that I've thought about it and that I've shifted over time to give you the best view that I can of my position, so that when you guys take over, it'll give us the best chance to do something productive. Okay. So to start with, I've always sort of held this like invented view. That's sort of where I've been residing. And my main argument, at least at first, was if it's not invented, what would it mean to invent? Can you call anything else an invention? The metaphor that I like to use is the light bulb. If you're not inventing the light bulb, you're discovering a combination of physical interactions. And if I take this atom with, if I'm remembering correctly, 74 protons in its nucleus, tungsten, and stretch it into a thin filament and pass a current through it, I get light. I just discovered that combination yields that result. I didn't invent anything.
I've thought of the same thing with the quote unquote invention of fire, right? The first people who created fire were probably like, this is fucking magic. What the fuck? And as you get down into it, you're like, oh no, this reaction produces this result. We just found out that was the case. Right.
And then what then would be the nature of invention? Is it the moment that let's say I have this great invention, the flammity-diddly-flammity-doo, and when I think flammity-diddly, is that the moment that I've invented it? Do I have to write down or articulate through speech plans to another human being? Do I have to build a physical flammity-diddly?
I would say...
At what point is there an invention?
Oh, I love this. This is exactly my kind of call. So I would say, now push back on this if you think this is different, the moment you can replicate it a second time. So there are people who have invented things that have failed the second that they were put into the real world. I think this applies to math, where you can invent like an equation, I suppose. But the only use that we have for the word is when we can point to something that is useful, essentially. So I would say if you made a flammity-diddly-doo and you did it a second time, or you told me how to make one and I could also make one, you will have invented that thing. How does that strike you?
I agree with you because I disagree so much. This is like a weird horseshoe theory thing. Ooh. I'm going to try and take you through this. Sorry if I mess something up. But I personally am very much... So I will start with an analogy. I'll start with just a minor thing that sort of irked me, is when you talked about purpose and replication in mathematics, because that's sort of this idea of applying applied to physics, or you're applying it to cosmology, the equations of motion, the equations of this and that. The purpose of mathematics is, I don't really think we can do that just because it has a physical use. And in the same way, my high school used to host, before COVID, these charity concerts for an organization called Music for Memory. Mm-hmm. And what they do is they get MP3 players and give them to dementia patients so that it can help with their memory. But the point of music is not medicine, nor is it memory. It's beautiful music, right? Just because it can be applied somewhere useful, that does not mean that is its purpose. To move on to the issue at hand, I think that invention is more about what happens, what pops into your mind. And to connect that to discovery, we use our physical senses to discover things about the physical world. Right now in front of me, there is a keyboard. I use my physical sense of sight to see it there. I can touch it right now. I can interact with it with my physical senses. I see invention, and the language is going to get kind of floaty here because I don't have very good language just yet for this, but it's sort of the sense interface with a world of these abstracts. These ideas exist in the abstract, and that invention is my interface with that. Just as physical senses are an interface with the physical, my mind is an interface with those ideas.
Okay, so you're saying the ideas exist outside of you somehow, and you are interfacing with them?
I mean, this is sort of where I run into walls. Because, like, there's the world, there's sort of this language, I believe, from Plato, where you might have a world of abstracts, a world of forms.
Right.
And I think thinking about where it is kind of, maybe the term would be category error. Like, if it's not physical, what does having a physical location mean?
Right, which is where we get the problems with God being existent before the universe.
Yeah.
But no,
Right,
so you're
right.
so are you a Platonist, or are you an idealist in that sense?
I probably flip-flop 5 or 6 times a day. We're going to skip that one for now.
The mark of a true philosopher, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
When it comes to philosophy of math, the label, I'm pretty sure, is probably conventionalist. Basically, that we should choose the axioms for the results they produce rather than the, like, human intuition that might be the more discovery sense, like our intuition about how rocks behave when you group them. That might be an analog of addition and group theory. But you should, because we can build different sets of axioms that have different consequences. That's sort of like a formalist sort of view, which is sort of the counter to mathematical realism and Platonism.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sensing maybe an inner contradiction there with my own view, because I'm sort of using the language of the realist in one aspect and the non-realist in the other. Oh, bother.
It does not necessarily mean that they're incompatible.
Right.
And often we find
Good
ourselves, we often find ourselves kind of picking and taking those things and kind of refining them for ourselves, and it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing. The category error piece is the piece that I latched onto, because I think that therein is where I kind of break it apart.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to numbers, well, let's talk about numbers, right? There is one apple.
Yeah.
What is the number one in the context of that sentence? It is a descriptor for the apple. Right? How many of that apple are there? There's one of them, right? That one is just a descriptor. It does not exist in space somewhere independent of the apple being described. It is a descriptor. And so when we're interacting with math, right, just because it leads to and can lead to true conclusions does not mean that it is something else. They're still descriptors. It's just the way that we're applying them. They're incredibly useful. But it's those applications. Like you jump into a pool, you get wet. Is the fact that you're actually wet make wetness something that exists outside of describing a thing? Right? It's still an adjective.
Right, but I think maybe where they're coming from is this concept of, okay, well, you say wetness. Is wetness the emergent property of a cluster of water molecules without the experience of also being wet? Or can you only be wet if you are experiencing wetness?
That is an entirely different conversation, I think.
Oh, I'm off on my own.
Yeah, I think I'm more on Eric's line here, V.
Okay, I'm on my own journey.
I want to have that quality of conversation.
We will absolutely have that another time. Go ahead.
Should absolutely call in about that one.
I should call in about that.
No. I not you. Oh, God damn it. I feel like that. I think Lily should call in about that again later, because I think that parallels qualia in a big way. But
I've never thought about the philosophy of math that way. Damn it! I'm gonna spend my entire summer thinking about this now. Thank you so much.
Well, I mean, if you trace it back, there are a lot of polymaths, people who would call themselves philosophers, mathematicians. You have these, it was, it's the scientific revolution, right? It branched out from, finding these rules. The thing is what it is, isn't what it isn't, and can't be what it is and what it isn't at the same time. It's application of the scientific method. And by doing that, you get these branching areas, of mathematics, of science, of biology, of chemistry, and you just go on and on and on. And but they share that branch going up. And so understanding where all of that comes from definitely can help you prevent yourself from falling into a hole, and that hole being category errors.
Right.
So when you're doing math, right? When you're doing math that is absolutely devoid of context, right? 2 + 2 = 4. We don't know if we're talking about apples or Daffy Ducks. That is context dependent on, you don't know
like
whether or not it pertains to anything true in the world, right? You just know how to interact with those things if they're true, right? And one of the fallacies that I think really folds in here is confusing the map and the place. And I think that understanding this and wrestling with this is going to help keep you from confusing the map and the place, right? So we can do 2 + 2 = 4, two Daffy Ducks + 2 Daffy Ducks = 4 Daffy Ducks. If Daffy Ducks existed, we've shown that we know how to add them, and
right. That's sort of
go ahead.
Like Karl Popper's 2 senses, if you're familiar.
It has been 4 years since I've read Popper. I do not remember a damn thing. Help me.
So the idea is, if we take a statement like 2 Daffys + 2 Daffys is 4 Daffys, there's the sense in which it's logically verifiable, right? 2 + 2 = 4. We can build from Peano's axioms or a set theoretic construction of addition similar to von Neumann's ordinals. You can build that way just purely from axioms and logic.
Right.
But there's also this sense when you're applying it to Daffys, where we're testing essentially.
Yeah, but we have no Daffys.
Work as units in that way when you relate them and try and relate those concepts.
You got it. And the way that I keep them apart in my head is I remember that there's a difference between the map and the place.
And the place.
And if you're adding them devoid of that context, you are drawing a map, and that's fantastic. And we can apply that elsewhere, right? We can draw a map of Middle Earth, and you can see where Mordor is in relation to the Shire.
Internally, it's consistent.
But that doesn't, and that consistency is fantastic. We can build worlds out of that. We can understand so much about that, but that doesn't mean that the place exists. It just means that you can draw the map. And that is where math is incredibly useful, is we can draw maps to places that don't ever need to exist. Go ahead.
Okay. So to relate this back to invention and discovery with the map and the place, when we draw the map, when we set the axioms in place that we're going to use to, whether we're doing it this way or that way, we include the axiom of choice or we exclude the axiom of choice, that's building a map. When we try and apply it to the real world, that's when the discovery happens. Even the consequences of axioms, like higher order statements in the logic of a system, when we derive a system of calculus or something from our axioms, we're still building a map.
I at that point, I think the words invention and discovery
kind of blur.
Yeah, I mean, really, when it comes to language,
that's where I'm at too.
But that's okay because that's because language is what we're creating to try and describe concepts, and so long as we can understand what the other person means, then we can have a meaningful conversation. And so you got to a place where it's fuzzy, but here's the awesome thing. The awesome thing is, if you want to create, and it is absolutely, up to you, but if you want to create a difference between them, then we can have a more nuanced conversation about it. I use the talking about the difference between sex and gender, right? When we create a difference between those words, we can have a much more nuanced conversation. So I think that if you
remember that initially they were different. Ooh.
I'm trying to describe.
I know.
Sorry, Eric, but
I just want to be included.
I'm sorry, V. And we're getting way off. I'm sure we're losing a whole bunch of people. But Lily, please call in, especially about the quality thing, because I want to see you and V have that conversation.
y'all are my kind of people. This discussion was so much fun. I'll definitely think about the quality thing, and I'll also think about some of those language barriers to try and maybe get us a bit further if we can, when I call back.
This is so
awesome.
my jams. Oh,
Absolutely.
and also watch the comments underneath, because the all caps, holy crap, you were wrong about this thing, is amazing. I love it. So
I love seeing that too.
You just told someone to read the comments.
Share me a new one, please.
Wow.
yeah, same here. Take care. Lily.
All right. Thanks so much, Lily.
I loved that. That was a good call. Oh my gosh, that is just my flavor of esoteric.
Yeah, right.
Oh. Okay.
All right. Helena has tried to call in a couple times and keeps dropping the web connection.
Oh no.
So let's talk with Helena in England.
Yeah, for as long as we can.
Helena, welcome back. We are so happy you're calling in again. We'll try and make sure we get your call in case you drop again.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, sorry, I think it's internet here. It's just a bit funny.
No worries at all. What can we help you with today?
Yeah, I just wanted to know the best way to describe, when someone dies, like, best way to comfort someone or to explain it without using, the afterlife.
Yeah, that's a huge question, especially today. I feel like is very weird, just because for a lot of people, this is a day where they have to contend with the death of a loved one.
Yeah, I'm having the same issue coming up.
Hey, well, lots of empathy for you there, for sure. For me, I remember talking about this with my family when I went back to kind of deal with my dad's death back in 2019. And they were all very religious, still are. And they were talking about it in terms of the afterlife, in terms of heaven, in terms of, where is he going to end up? Because he wasn't a great person, frankly. And, dying by suicide is considered a sin that damns you to hell, essentially. So there was a lot of really stressful conversations happening internally where they were all like, where is he? Where did he go? And are we going to see him again? And are we happy about that or not? And they looked at me and they were just like, what are your thoughts on this? Because you clearly are operating in a completely different paradigm. And there was this conversation, and the way I put it was, there was a world before my dad existed, and now it's back to that world where my dad doesn't exist anymore, right? If we can conceive of a world where someone doesn't exist yet, then we're just going back to a world where they don't exist afterwards. And that can be really hard to deal with, especially if you want to see them again, or if you want to know that they're having their comeuppance, whatever the case may be. It can be a really difficult pill to swallow, but the fact that they don't exist anymore is, it's not out of the question, right? It has already happened. It's happened for most of history that this person wasn't on the planet, and then they were for a little bit, and now they're not anymore. And the difference is just what they did while they were on Earth, I don't know. I don't know if that's helpful. It's not platitudes for sure, but
No, yeah, it's just so my dad's got terminal cancer, and my daughter's got to that stage when she's aware of who he is.
Yeah.
And it's just next, obviously going forward, how do you explain how do we explain it to her as a non-religious family?
Yeah.
What's happened, knowing that obviously other people will try and comfort her with, oh, he's in heaven, or
right.
There
are a lot of different ways that you can approach this with a kid, and I'm of a couple different minds here, right? If she is going to get comfort out of someone else telling her that her grandfather is in heaven, you kind of have to pick your battles. Is that one that you want to, is that a hill you want to, for lack of a better term, die on?
Yeah. We're not even aware of that concept yet. So it's
Yeah.
She doesn't even know about that. So it's just like trying to work out what we're going to say. I mean, we could introduce that, but then obviously that's going down the heaven route, which is introducing a new concept to her, which she's not even aware of yet.
Right. So what I've heard, I don't know if it was Daryl Ray has suggested, is go to a sandbox and draw a picture in the sand. It can be a house, it can be a flower, it can be anything that, your kid wants to draw. And then have them look at it and then wipe it away. Is the flower there anymore? No. Was the flower there, and do you remember the flower? Yes. And that's really the important part, right? This was an experience that you had, you drew something, you remember it, you did that together, and now it's gone, but that doesn't mean that those things didn't happen and weren't valuable.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I think it's a good way to teach her. Obviously, things exist and they don't, but they still mean something.
Yeah, and I think that's got to be, at least for me, if I were in this situation, that's what I would be focusing on. I would be focusing on that concept of what is the most important thing that you can take away from this experience? And it is cherishing the memories of the person and keeping them alive in that way. And to me, another thing to remember is kids, especially if your daughter doesn't already have a concept of heaven, she's not going to have to deal with the loss in the same way that somebody who was told heaven existed and then, that got taken away is going to. If any of my siblings or my mom deconvert at any point, they're going to deal with my dad's death all over again in a very different way than I did, because at the time I had already come to the conclusion that there was no heaven. So your kid might not even have the same level of attachment or grief around the concept as you might, because she simply doesn't have any idea that it was even an option.
And man, that's nice, because grieving twice is rough.
Yeah.
It's really rough.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the Elephant and Piggy books?
I haven't, no.
No, it's a series of kids' books, and I think it's called We're in a Book. I was just trying to look it up. I would get that book. It's a good one. It's these two characters.
Yeah, thanks for the recommendation.
Yeah, they discover that they're in a book, and one of the characters is like, "But books end." And the other character is, well, then let's celebrate while we can. Let's enjoy every moment of this that we can. And the other, but it's going to end. And it's kind of a good way to talk about that piece with kids is just because we understand that there's an ending doesn't mean that we shouldn't celebrate and do the most we can with what we have, because that's kind of an offshoot of where these conversations tend to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just quite difficult because obviously no one was expecting it.
Yeah. It's always hard, and it's nothing that we're going to say is going to make it not really sucky. Like, it's gonna suck, and I'm so sorry that you and your family have to go through that.
Yeah.
But if we can be honest and vulnerable, and that's another thing, let your kid know that it's okay to be vulnerable and to feel sad. I know we've had so many people who are parents call in and say things like, I go into the other room to cry.
Yeah.
Or I don't want my kid to see me upset. And as long as you are not directing that upset at the kid, it's a really beautiful way to show what grieving looks like, and that it's natural and that it's okay, and that she can feel however she needs to feel about it. If she's not phased a lot, if she doesn't quite get it, that's amazing. And she gets to remove herself from that, and that's great. If she's feeling it a lot, then the best thing you can do is also feel that with her and make sure that she's not alone.
Yeah, I think going forward it's going to be difficult, because at the moment we'll explain like, oh, he's not here anymore. She'll probably just go, oh, and then carry on.
Yeah.
But obviously as she gets older, when she realises that something's happened, it's going to be harder. But yeah, I think letting her express her grief is the right thing.
And also, if you can get to a therapist, Getting a professional who can get to know you and your child and what the specific needs of your family is. It may be different. I mean, we're just two assholes on the internet, so this is not medical advice.
No, by no means.
But definitely, if you have the opportunity, getting professional help, it's so nice, especially when it comes to things like grieving, because so many people think, we can't go to the therapist unless there's something really wrong with you. No, there are so many places that, working through that can help, and grief is one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the book called again? Sorry, I just want to make sure I get it down properly.
Oh, no problem. It's called We Are in a Book.
We Are in a Book. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. It's an elephant and piggy book.
Brilliant. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's just obviously it's a difficult moment for everyone, and actually having to know, and I'm going to have to explain to my daughters. I think that's hurting the most.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I hope that helped, Helena. I know that this is just such a beast of a conversation to even have to have, but really I'm so glad that you feel like you can call in and talk to us about it. That's the reason we do this show, is to talk about the hard things with people who want to talk with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you've been great. You've helped me along with especially like in terms of skepticism, become more educated, and you've been a fantastic help with my trans journey.
Oh, amazing.
Even just in the background.
Yay!
I just wanted to ask one more question. Is it okay to put on like a post somewhere, obviously when my dad does pass, that please don't write thoughts and prayers to people? Because obviously we're not a religious family. Yeah. It's not something we would really feel comfortable with. I know people sometimes do it out of kindness, not realizing that it can make people feel uncomfortable.
Right.
You are absolutely entitled to advocate for yourself and for your family.
Mm-hmm.
You have the right to advocate for yourself and for your family.
I'm not trying to like offend anyone, but also say like, we don't have the same beliefs. So if you want to do it in your own personal space, that's fine. Just don't bombard me with messages or phone calls.
That is absolutely okay.
I think that is one of the places where religion can be the most toxic, is when believers are told that they should swoop in when people are feeling vulnerable and upset, to just try and wedge that religion in there at the most vulnerable time in a person's life. Yeah. You do not have to deal with that, and you certainly don't have to deal with it to make other people comfortable. That's just not okay.
Yeah, because happened at my granddad's funeral. My mum wasn't very happy with it.
Yeah, funerals are a whole other beast for sure.
Yeah. But like we're a non-religious family, so we're fine with the funeral side, because we're probably not going to have that much anyway with COVID and everything.
That's fair. Well, Helena, we're happy that you called.
We're sending hugs.
We're sending hugs. If there's anything,
thank you so much.
In lieu of thoughts and prayers, if there is anything tangible we can help with, let us know. Tweet the show, and we will keep an eye out. We want to make sure that you guys are taken care of as much as we on the other side of the ocean can. And
if anything, that's just connecting you with other people that you can talk to, check out our Facebook group. Our Twitter is incredibly active because of V, but we also have a Discord.
Helena.
We have a growing Discord community, and just an amazing base of people that I'm sure would be happy to talk to you too.
Thank you. I think Discord's the only thing I'm not following you on at the moment, so I'll get on that.
Cheers.
Well, all right.
As V probably knows.
Yes, Helena is one of my favorite mutuals. So.
Wait, this is that Helena?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Helena.
I'm famous.
In our house you are.
Oh yeah. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much, Helena.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Of course. Bye.
I really want to talk to Essex.
I know you want to talk to Essex.
Of course I do.
I'm also going to ask you to do a 1-up so I can run away for 5 seconds.
Oh, okay. That's perfectly fine. Oh, no, that is focusing on you.
That's the wrong one. You just saw host and just hit it. You're like, of course I'm the host. Let me just hit that one.
Stop. All right. We're talking to...
Hello, Eric.
Essex. Hello.
Yeah, hi.
You're good?
All right. I'll be right back.
Okay. How's it going? What do you want to talk about?
So, about 2 weeks ago, you brought up this really interesting idea that I didn't have the words to describe myself, but I knew I held. And you called it, what?
Context-dependent morality.
Context-dependent morality.
Mm-hmm.
You said you had thoughts on it and weren't particularly keen on it. May I ask why?
So just to kind of contextualize for people who hadn't seen or that, before, I think it was around the veganism discussion, right? That
it was, but you were also veering into Christianity stuff, and I'm more on the Christianity side of things, and using it to. Would you like me to have a stab at describing it?
I would love to know what you believe, and then maybe we can talk about what I believe, so that we have something to compare and contrast here. So what do you believe?
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah. So what do you believe?
So, yeah. So when I read, I'm a Christian. Mm-hmm. When I read welcome back. When I read the Bible, I see statements like women can't talk, or slavery is a good idea, and one of the ways I get around that being icky is that I say, okay, the society we have nowadays is different and more developed and has no more need for stuff like keeping women suppressed,
okay,
etc., etc.
So, I guess my question here is, the reason why there's a rub there is because when I was a Christian, and in speaking to many Christians, there's this idea that God is unchanging and has set out these moral standards that are just set in stone, that they do not change. They always have and they always will be. And so there's no room for context there. There's no room for what the society is or how, they're treating each other, because to have that kind of set of eternal mandates means that you don't get to look at it that way. You don't get to approach it that way. Because if you do, that means that God cannot be that moral standard, cannot be that moral guide. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure. I'm not so sure.
So do you think God changes in your mind? I don't want to straw man you. Do you think God is unchanging, or do you think that God changes over time?
I think God is unchanging, but I think the state of the world changes, and thus the expression of God's nature appears to change.
Oh, so I think this is someone who. Do you want to hop in, V?
Yeah. So if someone has already said this, I apologize. I think where I come down is less where I think we disagree on what the implications of a context-dependent morality is. I don't think it necessitates a changeable God, but I do think that it makes it impossible to pinpoint any kind of objective morality today, because it could just be another iteration that is not ultimately in line with that objective God. So the issue is not this thing, slavery, whatever, was okay back then and it's not now because of context. What we are coming up against is not, okay, God changed. Maybe our understanding of God changed, but they thought they had it back then. We think we have it now. It could be in another 3,000 years, it's completely different. So we cannot make any claims about what objective morality is, because we have already admitted that our context is the only thing that is really influencing our morality. And at that point, it's kind of tomato, right?
Yeah, the guy.
Because at that point,
there is no lawgiver if the laws are constantly changing.
Or even if there is a lawgiver and we are misunderstanding that lawgiver to the extent that we cannot point back and say this is what the lawgiver says, then there might as well not be one. So we are in a subjective moral world, even if there is an objective moral lawgiver, because we don't have access to it. That's where I come down.
Damn.
I've never quite had it explained that way. I've always had a slightly strawman version of that opinion, and it makes a lot of sense. Thanks, V.
Absolutely. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Where are you pushing back on?
I feel like Essex is taking the process theology route.
It could be.
Yeah.
It could be. Do you know about process theology, Essex? Is that kind of where you're coming from?
No, I'm not familiar with the term process theology.
So, from my understanding, and I know Mason, Jacob, I get it if you're watching. Process theology essentially is God exists, God influences the world, God has a say in morality, but God doesn't know any more than we do at any given point, and God changes alongside us, and we influence each other. So God is influencing us, we are influencing God, and therefore we can try and get a good moral sense of where we're going based on what they would consider God's influence or the conscience or, moral standards of the day. But the reason that we have varying moral structures throughout time is that not only have we changed, God has also changed.
That's the process theology outlook. Now
which is interesting, but unfalsifiable. So,
yeah, but yeah.
And it's not a proposition that I would tend to agree with either.
Okay, where are you coming from then?
So it's a good thing we didn't straw. Okay.
Yeah.
I was starting to strawman you, Essex. I apologize.
That's quite okay, because what's happening in my head right now is, what exactly was it that V said? The straw man of no one's actually walked me through the links to get me from, there's differences in what other Christians believe and what I believe, all the way to therefore there's not a moral God, and I think I agree with that. So I'm not sure I'm so much of a Christian anymore.
Whoa.
Hey.
I'm going to keep thinking about it, and I'm probably going to say goodbye for now, and let you get to some other callers.
Hey, Essex, that is amazing.
Yeah.
Definitely call back once you've thought about it, because if there's a hole in where I'm coming from, I want to know about it. And if you are convinced by it, we also want to know and what next steps might be from there. So,
especially because you sound very reasonable. And
yeah,
so
awesome.
If it convinces you, we want to know.
Okay, sounds like a plan. And have a good day, and say goodbye to the chair for me. Bye-bye.
Will do. Goodbye. Wow. We might have
love
just had
that.
our first online deconversion process starting to happen there.
We've had a few, but man, that is fun, especially because they're really, really diving in and investigating. And
I freaking loved that call.
We want people to believe things for good reasons, not because they agree with us, but because they've applied the best tools available and have come to a conclusion for good reasons.
And just gotten other perspectives. I think the theme of this series of calls this week is, I haven't heard it put in that particular way before. Let me go back and think about it. And that is beautiful. That is skepticism, ladies and gentlemen.
And we love it.
to see it. Love that for you.
Okay, Sam, stay on the line. I really want to talk to you. I really, though, want to talk to this person.
You want to talk to Chris?
I do want to talk to Chris.
Oh.
Chris in California.
Hey, you guys. How you doing?
We're doing all right.
Doing good.
What did you want to talk about?
Thanks for taking me, man. I'm good. It's good to see you. I mean, I don't know if you remember me, but I know you guys well. It's been around 7 years, huh? So,
Nice.
congratulations on your new thing.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate it.
So what do you want to talk about today? It says in the notes you want to talk about a spiritual plane? I'm sorry?
Yeah, I can get off the speakerphone. Is that better?
Please, yeah.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, things wind up getting a little echoey, and it sounds a lot better, especially... Oh, man, way better. All right, Chris, what do you want to talk about?
Besides all the congratulations, there you are, and I love you guys. But besides that, two things cross my mind, and the first one's not the main one, but I have very close Christian friends, and when sometimes I call them, I'm feeling down or whatever, depressed here and there, and my friend, his wife, would say, well, I feel okay, God is with me, and will be with me in the afterlife. And I don't care about afterlife, and maybe, and who knows, and all that, but it's hard to relate, and I don't go on about it, but something in me wants to wonder, why do you do that? I mean, we can move on from this one if you like.
Unfortunately, we're at the time point where we want to get to you, and we want to get to one more caller after you. So we definitely want to interact.
Let's move past that one completely and drop it. No deal there.
No worries.
And the main one that concerns me is the issue of spiritual realm, unseen stuff, blah blah blah, whatever, and all kinds of aspects to it. And
first question,
I guess you might say I think it exists, and I don't know.
Okay.
It seems like something that shouldn't be discounted so completely as that is invisible. Therefore, you're off on a rabbit hole chase.
Right. Well, I do want to clear up a misconception right off the bat. Is the argument is not that it's invisible, right? We understand that there are actual things that exist that are invisible. The issue is that it's unfalsifiable, which is different. So the difference there is that it's not whether or not something is visible or something is tangible. It's can we determine whether or not this thing exists or prove it in one way or the other. And unfortunately, by definition, the afterlife only happens after this life. And so we in this life cannot measure it. We cannot see if it happens again and again. We don't have any eyewitnesses. There is no way to determine if it exists or not. So we're not saying it's ridiculous because we can't see it, therefore go away, silly person. What we're saying is, okay, well, we can't really know one way or the other, so we're going to opt to not believe in it until sufficient evidence has been proven to us. And for the afterlife, like I said, that's possible.
Hey, B?
Yeah.
Yeah. If I could interrupt you again.
No, go for it.
A little bit here, because afterlife, schmafterlife, I don't care. An whole concept of afterlife is like whatever. So my concept is more of other aspects. I mean, if I was to look briefly at what I thought, yeah, we probably have an essence that carries on. Afterlife, in people's other vision, there's all kinds of weird stuff to it. But I'm talking about the whole spectrum of aspects. Anyway.
Wait, hold on, Chris. It sounds like we're getting past each other a little bit, and this might be a call that'd be better suited for earlier on in an episode, so we have more time to talk to you. But
yeah,
can I repeat this back to you and see if we're on the same page?
I heard what you said, but go ahead.
Oh no, I was thinking when you said spiritual plane, I think the first thought was afterlife. But that is not necessarily what people mean when they say spiritual plane. And so are you saying that the way you describe the spiritual plane that you believe in is not necessarily an afterlife? Is that correct?
In some ways, it could be described as that, but there's other things. I mean, the direct spiritual plane
Chris.
Equals exactly afterlife.
Sure.
No.
Yeah.
Spiritual plane is an aspect of existence, and there's all kinds of things about it.
Chris?
That I don't know, and I don't know any of them, really.
So if you don't know any of them, why do you believe it exists?
I don't believe anything exists except my physical being, and
well, then it sounds like we agree.
Then why are we calling? Why are we calling, Chris? If you don't believe in it.
Because I love you guys, and I wanted to check in, man.
Well,
I'd like to get you a next caller if you like.
Yeah, love you too, man. Thank you for calling in. Take care.
Go ahead. All right.
What
okay,
was that?
we love it, but we want to make sure that we're giving time to people who want to talk to us about what they believe and why.
I'm so confused. Sam, help me.
Sam Chaos, calling
Sam
back in from the UK.
Hey, guys.
Hey, nice to talk to you again.
So what did you want to talk about?
Yeah, nice to talk to you guys.
Last time you called, Sam, you made it very clear that you are theist with an asterisk, and we asked you to call back and talk to us a little bit more about that. Is that where we're going today?
That's exactly where we're going today.
Beautiful. All right, talk to me.
So, there's a bunch of background information that I could give, but I'm going to try and keep it to concise points because I'm aware we're running low on time here. So, basically, I am of the view that, to some extent, you can consciously change your beliefs.
I would agree with you on that.
I hold that one of the things, at least I personally can do this with, is my view on theism. And I want to make it clear that I'm not a classical theist. I think classical theism is dumb. I hold something a bit more akin to the definition Stephen Dillon gives in A Case for Polytheism, which, because I'm aware basically no one's going to have read, would be the idea of a disembodied consciousness and other things that would then entail from that. And while I can't demonstrate that, that seems plausible philosophically to me. And I am of the view that it's through different philosophical lenses, polytheism, deism, and atheism can all make equal amounts of sense. And I think any of those lenses are applicable, and I cannot know which is which.
Well,
so depending on which lens I find pragmatically useful, because I am a pragmatist, primarily,
Okay.
then I can choose to be an atheist or a polytheist. And I do both. Sometimes
Sam?
I actively choose to be an atheist because I find it pragmatically useful in the moment.
Hey, Sam, you gave us so much to chew on that we are definitely not going to have time for everything, but I kind of want to hit one of my favorites. Do you want to hit one of your favorites and we'll go from there?
Sounds good.
Okay. Do you want to go first? Or
you sound like you have something you're chewing on. So
absolutely.
Go for it.
Sam, how much do you care about what is true?
I think what is true is important where it's accessible within its own given framework.
Okay, that's a really good
Does that make
definition.
sense?
Damn.
Basically,
I think that's the first time
anyone
has ever stumped Eric on that question before.
Well, I like the answer. Now I'm processing that. So give that to me one more time. What about truth?
So truth is important, but I'm also very skeptical generally, and I think actual ontology, for example, is completely inaccessible, and there are different frameworks through which we can look. And I think that knowing what is true as much as we can know it within its own framework is important, but I think that's the closest to an idea of truth as we can get.
I think that I use the terms that I use is capital T truth and lowercase t truth, that we're always striving for capital T truth, but all we can ever really wind up with is lowercase t truth.
I think that's accurate. I think capital T truth is inaccessible.
For the most part. I mean, you can structurally get to capital T truth when you're just talking about definitions. You know, if we're talking about married bachelors, that kind of thing. We agree, correct?
When you say within this structure, this thing can't work, then we can know that.
Okay. Do you think that there is a dichotomy where either a God exists or a God doesn't exist? Or deities? Do you feel like that's a dichotomy?
I feel like with the definitions most people are going to use in the definition I gave of theism, yes, but there are certain definitions of theism I could provisionally accept in which that wouldn't be the case, wherein they could exist
sometimes, or they could exist contextually.
Okay, so then let's hit a couple home runs really quick before we pass over to V. Home run number 1. Do you think that the Abrahamic gods, the different Abrahamic descriptions of a god or Allah, do you think that they exist?
I think
any
those
one of them.
entities exist. I do not think they exist in the capacity they're described in.
Okay. Do you think that we could possibly ever find out whether or not they exist, or do they exist the same way that Bigfoot exists?
I think that if there is a way to verify they exist, then I do not know how that would be.
So we're in the Bigfoot realm at this point, right?
Not really. So I tend to dive into epistemology a bit in terms of personal experiences, and I know a lot of people pull a face at that.
Yeah,
I think that it does hold up.
I just don't think that I have as good of a grasp on reality that I can say definitively that my experience maps perfectly to reality. And because of that, I need to couch it in context. I've been wrong about things and I've misremembered things. And knowing that, I can't make definitive statements like that, which makes personal experience difficult, especially in that context. But I feel like I'm hoarding you.
I would agree with you.
Okay.
Is the weird thing there is that I entirely agree with you.
Awesome. I feel like this is the kind of conversation, this specific offshoot of what you said is the kind that we need to sit down with a beer over, which means that when we go to the UK, we're going to have to do that. But in the meantime, I'm going to pass you over to V.
Alternatively, in November, when I visit Austin.
Hey! You coming to Faithless Forum?
That's the plan.
Yes.
Nice.
Oh, I'm so excited to meet you in person, Sam.
All right, V.
Yeah. So, Sam, the thing that I want to kind of hone in on for this call is the choice aspect and the idea that we can choose what we believe. Because again, I feel like we're all using our versions of these definitions. So using my definitions, I agree with you, but I don't know if my definitions match yours. So I'm thinking maybe let's play a little bit of that back and forth and see where we come to. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So
check we're on the same page.
For sure. So for me, I think that we can choose to an extent what we believe. We can't choose necessarily what convinces us. And the difference there is I could have chosen to remain a Christian if I decided at any point in my deconversion to stop and not look into it anymore. And I think a lot of Christians are there in that space where they're like, if I go down this path too far, I'm going to stop believing.
There be dragons out there.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think I'm going to do that. Yeah, go ahead.
Sort of doxastic voluntarism? Involuntarism.
Could we call it self-delusion?
Well, it's like if I watch the end of a movie, I'm going to know how the movie ends. If I decide to stop the movie halfway through, I'm not going to know how the movie ends. I know it ends, right? I'm not under the impression that if I stop it, it will never end and it keeps going. But there have been books that I haven't read the last chapter of because I couldn't bear to finish it. Right?
Halfway through Red Dead Redemption, the first one, I stopped. I figured I think I know where it's going, and
I can't deal with it.
In my headcanon, that is as far as it goes. Halfway through, for those people who've played Red Dead Redemption, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
So I think to an extent you can decide to stop a line of investigation before it convinces you. But once it convinces you, there's really no going back unless you try and backtrack and find other counter evidence to counteract that. So that's where I kind of come down on the can you choose what you believe? And I feel like you might actually be saying you can choose what convinces you. Is that accurate?
No, I think if you find several things either identically or very similarly convincing, you can choose which lens to look through as to which you will then believe. And because I find atheism and polytheism similarly convincing, that's why that's one of the things I can choose about.
Interesting. Okay, that is very interesting. And with a lot of things, I think you're absolutely right. I think if I'm looking at, well, you know, here are the pros to this specific, you know, way of eating or timing of eating, and here are the pros to this, like, part of me is like,
It's so goddamn pragmatic.
oh, okay. Do you know how many studies have been done about the effects of coffee? And like half of them are like, it will kill you forever. And the other half are like, it will make you impossible to kill. And you're like, well, these are both studies. I like drinking coffee. I'm going to decide that it will make me invincible forever.
I'm right there with vaping. So yeah.
Right. So like, yeah, in smaller cases, absolutely. And if you don't consider atheism or theism to be a big question or one that will influence your life, I can see the appeal of also just making it one of those, I like coffee, therefore I'm going to choose the studies that, you know, are convincing in that direction. I think where I would push back is that in conversation with a lot of people, it is a very big, life-changing kind of conversation. And that is where all of that tension comes in, right? Because if we were in a post-theistic world where some people were theists, some people were atheists, and it really didn't matter anymore, then absolutely, I think we would have a lot more in common. But for me, I think right now, there's a level of, I don't want to say irresponsibility because you do what you want with your brain, right? But there's a level of, okay, what am I saying to the people who are taking this super seriously and are being influenced by one set of beliefs or another in dangerous directions? Not saying that any one religion is primarily more dangerous than others. I think that's not accurate. But you know what I mean? Am I making any sense, Sam?
Yeah, you make sense. I think for me, internally, you would be right to say that it's not as much of a big deal. If you demonstrate one way or the other to me tomorrow, I'm still a pagan. I'm just a theistic pagan or an atheo-pagan.
Okay.
But I do think that even in the context of it being important, I think that when I say I can choose it, I can also, in a conversation, I can justify holding an atheistic position or justify holding a polytheistic position. And also, I possibly worth clearing up is that I'm very much of the view that like proselytization is bad, and I'm aligned with atheists that I speak to on pretty much everything outside of like a religious framework.
Yeah. No, I know for a fact we are aligned on like 98% of things at least in terms of like social progressive stuff. I think at this point,
You're Sam Chaos. I know who you are now.
Yeah, this is
okay.
yeah.
Contextualize.
This entire week has been Eric like, oh, you're that person. But yes, I'm going to leave it here, but I want you to call back because this is so interesting to me. I think what we're getting at essentially is your epistemology and the tools you are using in that epistemology that would make atheism and theism equally convincing. Like at this point, it makes sense from your epistemology that these things have equal weight. And now I want to find out what scales you're using that make those things have equal weight, because the ones I use, they don't. And one of us might need to recalibrate. And if it's me, I want to know. And if it's you, I want to have that conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a fun conversation to have and I do enjoy it.
I if y'all can do that, my goal will just be to try and figure out how best to break down the esoteric pieces into bite-sized pieces so everyone can follow along. Because for those of you who are sitting here going, what the hell are they talking about? I want to make this something that everyone can go on a journey with us on, because you can hear the excitement in this conversation. And I want you viewers, you listeners to the podcast to join us on this. We're going to find ways to do it, and we'll do it together. Sam, thank you. Thank you for calling in.
Thanks for taking the call, guys.
Absolutely.
Oh, man. That was fun.
That was really fun.
But at the same time, you had a really good point, and that is that it really does matter, and it matters so much because the stakes are so high. You know, the consequences are so high for people who do base their lives around some of these really dangerous worldviews. And I disagree with you. I think that in practice there are plenty of religions, one in particular that I'm thinking of, that is incredibly destructive. Don't get me wrong, the Catholic Church hides rapists, but I don't want to go to certain parts of the world because I'll just get straight up murdered. So I think that no, in practice,
well, yes, there are iterations of certain religions right now that are more destructive, but go back a couple 100 years and it was a different religion that was as destructive.
Agreed, which is again where we branch off between that esoteric outside view and the pragmatic in the real world right now.
Right. And the other thing is that we're talking a lot about the impact that this belief system might have of looking at both atheism and theism as equally coherent or equally convincing. And we're looking at the results of what that might mean. But that shouldn't matter in terms of what is actually true. Like, if it means that we have to deal with a whole bunch of stuff, then okay, we have to deal with that if it's true. So I do also want to make that comparison as well. Like, we're not saying because it might be harmful, therefore we can't ask the question. Because we always want to ask the question and deal with what the truth is afterwards.
Absolutely. I can't believe it's already time. This is amazing. Honestly, it's funny. We talk about this, and it's like the prep and the making the thumbnails. All of it is so much work, and the easy part, the part that we love, is actually doing the show. So while I try and pull up the live chats, we had some awesome people in the live chat who gave super chats. Yes, we are monetized now, and we are so excited about it. It is helping offset a lot of stuff that we're taking on, and we are getting tons and tons of support from people. So from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. We moved into a place together. We're going to be disassembling all of this. These mics are going to be going back to my soon-to-be ex-roommate, who I know, but I get to live with you now, and it's exciting. And you know, people have been helping in amazing ways by hopping on to our wish list on Amazon and just straight up buying gear, or being like, hey, I trust that you know what you need to put things towards, and shooting us donations. If you do want to support us, here are the links. There's the Patreon, the wish list on Amazon, and I know it's kind of expensive, but if you just want to buy us a coffee, heck, it helps. So
for me personally, I look at that's Eric's domain. I'm like, you update the wish list, I have no idea what we need, and half the things I don't even know what they do. So if you're like me and you're like, I want to get them this thing, but I have no idea if it's going to be useful until they get 10 other things.
Well, and we're just figuring it out. Like we just realized that we needed a wireless router, and so we were able to say that last week. We realized that you need a chair because we got to give this chair back, and so we got that taken care of. I think the next big things on our list is a NAS, which is a storage. If something happens to this computer, Skeptic is done. This is my personal computer. Eventually, we want to, build a production computer that can handle multiple cameras, and we can do all kinds of really cool stuff. That's on the list. But right now, I think the biggest thing, until we can actually have a set that we know, and get dimensions for things, is having a backup so that if something happens to this computer, the show is not entirely kaput. That said, we don't have the super chats. They disappeared, and I'm really, really upset about it.
I am very sad about that.
Yeah.
And we're a little bit running over, so unfortunately, I don't think we can...
Nope.
Oh, wait.
I think I just put on an ad instead of doing the thing.
Oops.
I feel like a jerk. Sorry, everybody. Did not mean that.
We can't give you a shout out, but here's an ad. So we unfortunately don't have the super chats this week. They decided not to load, but we've been seeing them. They have been so appreciated all the way through. Thank you so much. And if you want, you can DM me or at Skeptic Show, because it's me running that on Twitter. And if you gave a super chat, I can retweet your question with an answer on the Twitter So it's not the same as being shouted out, but we can shout you out on our Twitter. We can answer your question there. Just feel free to tag at Skeptic Show with your question.
And we sincerely appreciate it. We did not realize that there so much was needed to make this happen. But for those of you who want to support us, there are other ways. Please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you can see when we put things out. We're trying to cut the video so that a call from each Sunday is going out every day of the week.
Yes.
So hit that notification bell, subscribe. It helps us get up there. Share this on Facebook and Twitter and anywhere else that you can, because getting the word out means that we can continue to grow. And we've got so much planned, but
it'll be exciting. And next week you'll see us in our new studio.
Right.
It's exciting.
I'm so nervous because we're going to move this stuff over and I have no idea, and I'm terrified that nothing's going to work, and I'm just like, it's so scary.
We'll make it work. It'll happen. All right. So we are once again at the end of an episode, and I have a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach that Eric is going to do something horrible.
It's Father's Day, and so instead of, in lieu of doing like a sign off, I kind of want to do a dad joke.
You want to wait? No.
Yeah. Okay. So nope. How do you do? Okay. Hold on. How do you throw an outer space party? How do you throw a space party, V?
I don't want to know.
You plan it. You get it? You plan it. You plan it, V. You plan an outer space party.